Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Excuse the hair, we are part 1 of bleaching. It's getting done again tonight. So Blonde Amy is back, for anyone that is curious. So we have a wedding related video today. I have all my notes, if I'm looking down that is why. And it is basically a reflection on the wedding cake that I did recently, some tips and just a run through of how it works and anything that I learn. And I definitely did a lot of things differently this time, and I'm glad I did because it went perfectly my end, but there is definitely a little bit that did go wrong from the venue side, but it wasn't my issue and the bride was happy with it in the end. But I'll get onto that a little later. But it was very stressful on the day. So starting off, we've got baking, then you've got your stacking, decorating, then you've got the storing, and then you've got packing and like packing your bags and then delivering the cake. I will be doing a separate video on what is in my bag because then I can explain the individual items and like why it's good to take them. Some of it is more of a precaution, but it's always good to have. So I'll be going through that in another video, but I will put a list on the screen when we get to that section. So we're going to start with baking. The number one thing I always do, I do it for all my cakes, but I plan timings. I just do it in my notes in my phone, and I just have little timescales and tick boxes, because in your notes you can have a little circle which you can like tick off, which I love because I love a list. So I have a list of everything I need to do, so I'll literally have bake 6-inch, bake 8-inch, bake 10-inch, and then crumb 6-inch, crumb 8-inch, etc, etc. Same with final coat, any stencil work that needs to be done, any fondant work, any extras, toppers, anything like that. So I have that all listed out, and then I know exactly what I need to do. I put little timescales next to them, so I either put timings that I want to aim for, because I have so many things going on. So I have work, and then I also have to go to the gym and train, so I have the odd time scale where I'm like, right, I need to go and train at 4 because I need to have time to do everything else. So that's the way that I plan it out. And then I put the time scale, so it'll be like half an hour for the crumb coat, 45 minutes for the stencil work, etc. Just so again, when I look through, if I haven't ticked off certain things, then I can say, right, I've got 5 hours till the end of the day, what can I get done today, and just work it out that way. So I find that's really useful. Another thing is buy your ingredients in advance. So obviously you're gonna not be buying them on the day, hopefully, but I mean like well in advance. So I bought all my stuff at the beginning of the week, and then it meant that if I needed to go out and buy the odd bit, then that's not a problem, because it's highly likely that you're gonna misjudge how much you need. I never get it perfect. I always need like a block of butter, or I use slightly more icing sugar than I expected, so I have to go out and get one. It's not the end of the world, the shop is literally around the corner, but I find that buying them in advance and also calculating them exactly. So the way that I do this is I have the recipe and I will times it by how much I need, and then I'll say, right, I need 2 kg of icing sugar. Obviously, again, that's probably self-explanatory, most people probably do that, but some people might not. So work out your exact amount rather than like rounded, because it means that a lot of the time you don't actually need as many packets of things as you think, because you've got the exact measurement. And also I sometimes do it that I can buy like a kg of something and then half a kg, rather than buying 2 kg, which obviously costs more money, especially with the climate at the moment where you don't want to be spending money that you don't need to. So the next thing in regards to baking is split over a few days. I split mine differently this time and it worked so well. Like, I was so stress free, I loved it. So I did one thing per day. Normally I would do baking, crumb coating in the same day. It's a 4-tier cake, so that would have been slightly difficult anyway, unless I was off the whole day, which I wasn't. But I did baking one day, then I crumb coated the next, then I final coated the next, and then on the Saturday, which is the day that they were going out, I did absolutely nothing. So I made sure that they were all ready for the Friday night, so that the Saturday I could just get up and go and not have to do any final touches apart from at the venue. And then the next thing is do your research. So whenever you're using any new techniques, or even like the techniques that I was using, stencil work, I've done 1,000 times, but I just did a bit of research to make sure that I could store the cake effectively and how early I could bake it. And I know that as soon as you crumb coat the cake, it seals it and then it won't dry out. So that's why I baked it on the Wednesday and it was for the Saturday, and then I crumb coated it the Thursday morning because I wanted to make sure that it was crumb coated very early on. So in regards to baking things early, I don't usually do things more than 3 days early. I also don't freeze anything. Everything is made fresh. Again, it depends, but I prefer not to freeze things. There's a bit of a stigma around freezing things, and also I just worry because I know I've had normal food in my freezer that has got freezer burn, and I'm scared to death that I will spend loads on ingredients for a cake, and if it gets freezer burn, you cannot use it. So that is just a waste of so much money. So that's why I don't freeze anything. I don't want to risk it. But I do bake everything and then I cling film it and put it in the fridge. I mentioned this in the vlog, which is coming soon, but I cling film everything. Even if I am crumb coating it soon, I still cling film it and shove it in the fridge, because I find that if it's been refrigerated, it doesn't lose its crumbs as much. So when you're crumb coating it, obviously the whole point of crumb coat is to seal the crumbs, but you don't want cake just to be falling off if it's too soft and fluffy, which mine are. It depends if your recipe is a little bit more, I don't know what the word is, like stodgy or dense, that's the word I was looking for. If your recipe is a little bit more dense, a bit like, is it Madeira cake? Something like that is like a denser version of Victoria sponge, so that the crumbs don't come off as much. So I just find wrapping it in cling film, shoving it in the fridge, literally no crumbs come off it, so then it makes it a lot quicker to crumb coat. You haven't got a lot of mess, so it just works better that way. So stacking and decorating, make sure that you have a lot of photos of what you're going to be doing. Again, 9 times out of 10 you've discussed the design, everything's been finalised, but I have 1,000 different photos, and then I always have colour schemes so that I just have everything ready for when I'm actually decorating. In terms of the actual stacking process, one, make sure you've got plenty of time, because my cake's quite tall, so they need a lot of time to be refrigerated, which is why I do the order that I do in terms of stacking, crumb coating, etc, etc, because they need a lot of time in the fridge. If your cakes are shorter, they need less time, but I always dowel any multi-tier cakes, so I wouldn't usually dowel a single cake, even though they are quite tall. Some people do. It depends. If it's hot, then I might, but it's November, it's freezing outside, so the cake was fine. But for a wedding cake, I dowel all of them, so I use jumbo straws, which I do in a circle. Make sure that you don't do them wider than the cake above, because the whole point is that the board from the cake above will sit on these dowels, and then it won't be able to sort of sink and then ruin the cake underneath, because they are very heavy. This cake, I did not realise how heavy it was going to be. I've never done anything bigger than a 10-inch, and obviously the 10-inch cakes that I've done have been single tier. Whenever I've done wedding cakes before, they've always been 4, 6 and 8, whereas this was 12, 10, 8 and 6, so it was humongous. So I do the circular dowels like that, which is jumbo straws, and then I do a centre dowel, which is wooden, and it's a skewer. And normally for multi-tier cakes, I would do a skewer going the whole way through to the top so that they don't move. I would recommend this for 2-tier cakes, because 9 times out of 10 a 2-tier cake for even like a birthday is going to be transported by the client. But when you are delivering it and stacking it at the venue, it's very unlikely that it's going to be moved as it is, like all stacked. So I actually preferred not using a centre dowel for this one. So that's again something that I did differently. It makes it a lot easier to take apart, because you don't have to lift it off the dowel, which usually gets stuck. So then you need someone to pull it out while you're lifting the cake off. And there's just risk of actually completely dropping the cake. Whereas if you don't dowel it, you literally just lift the cake off and take it away, and it's so much easier. So that is the stacking and decorating, pretty much it. Obviously you know how to decorate cakes, so that bit I don't really need to go over. Like stencil work, this one I made sure that it was in the fridge for a good few hours before I actually did the stencil work. Otherwise your cake is going to be too soft to touch, that when you put the stencil on the outside you're just going to make imprints on it, and you need to have it nice and set so that when you actually scrape your stencil you're not going to damage the final coat. But the next thing is delivering, which is kind of the main part of the video. The delivering, stacking at the venue I think is the most stressful part. So I was completely stress-free when I was actually making the cake. The 3 days before I started, from like Sunday to Wednesday, I did not sleep and I was very, very stressed and anxious and just on edge because I hadn't started it, so I was worried about everything that could go wrong. I literally had nightmares. I don't know if anyone else had this, but I had nightmares that I was in a car crash when I was delivering the cake. Bit psycho. And then I couldn't make it to the venue. I had one where the cake was stacked and then someone dropped it after I left. I had ones that I dropped it. I had ones that I went to the wrong venue and then the cake wasn't there on time, obviously. So I had all kinds of nightmares, but as soon as I started making the cake I felt 1,000 times better. But once it was made, it was as if I was like, right, it's too good to be true. It's the first time where I've made a cake that huge and I was just like, why is everything going perfectly? I literally finished at 8 p.m. on Friday, and for those of you that watch the vlogs, you know that I'm normally up until like 3-4 a.m. decorating cakes, and then I went to the gym afterwards and I was in bed by 10 and I was like, why is everything going perfectly? Packed my bags, was all ready to go. But then the next day was where the stress hit. So I slept okay that night, but then I woke up in the morning and I was like, right, today is wedding cake day. So transporting it, it was freezing outside, but I still had my aircon on the whole way. It was an hour journey, so I had my jacket on and I was like freezing to death because I had to have the aircon on. I managed to fit 3 of the tiers in the boot and then 1 in the front. They were all wrapped, so they had like the box extenders, cling film around them, so they were all fine. Then when I got to the venue, I would recommend, 1, asking for a contact, because it makes it so much easier when you get there, because 9 times out of 10 venues have no idea what is going on. I have a bit of experience with weddings because I help my sister out with hair and makeup at weddings, so the amount of times we go into a venue and they're like, who the hell are you? So it's always good to have a contact, because then you can say, right, where shall I go? So I had the bride's contact number, and then I also had the bride's sister. So I just contacted the sister because I didn't want to disturb the bride on the day, and I just said, right, who should I ask for when I go in? Where should I go? Do you know where the cake's going? All of that. I did this a couple of days in advance, and then on the morning I sent them both a text message just to say, by the way, I am on my way, because again, because I did those weddings with my sister, I've seen the behind the scenes, because we do makeup on brides, bridesmaids, and 9 times out of 10 the bride is always like, I haven't heard from the flower person, I haven't heard from the cake maker, I haven't heard from this, and then they're worrying. So I was like, right, I'll send her a text early so that she knows that I am on my way and I will be sorting it out for her, etc. Because I always get worried, like, what if someone doesn't turn up? Like, obviously I will, but there's probably people that have had nightmares where people have been late or not turned up. So always communicate, find out where you're going. So then I found out that I needed to go to the front desk, which was right at the front of the building, obviously, but some of them surprisingly aren't. You have to go all the way around these old buildings depending on where they put the reception. So went to reception. They said, I don't know where the cake's going. And I was like, well, I know. So I said, they told me that there's a round table as you go in. So then you go in, find out where you're putting the cake. I knew it was on the main table by the rotating doors because they wanted it there for when people came in. So then I found another table that I could lay everything on, got my bag out the car with all my extra bits in it, and then I basically started stacking the cake. I got there at 9 AM. The cake didn't need to be ready till 12:30. I had to leave by 10:30 because I was going to Hemel to go to this rave. So I was like, right, I need to be out of here. So I wanted to give myself plenty of time. It actually always takes me less than I think. So I was out by 10. So I just made sure that everything was sorted, checked my time, like checked over the cake, everything like that. So on the day, everything that I did, the design was all finished, but any ribbons, any cake toppers, any flowers are all done at the venue. So don't do any of that at home, because when you stack the cakes, they're going to look different, and you want to make sure that everything is in the right place, because you can't really tell where to put the flowers until you've stacked it, because you won't know what it's going to look like. So I stacked it all, then I added all the ribbon. I'll again show you when I actually go through my bag, but I forgot my double-sided tape, which is what I would usually use, so I had to use buttercream, and it actually worked really well because it was so cold, so it just set straight away. And I just put a bit of buttercream in between the ribbon and then like stuck it over like that, and it worked so well. And then that just hides all of the gaps between the board and the next cake below, because there will be a slight gap. So stacked it all, did the flowers on it, it was all finished, cut off any sharp edges so that it's all nice and flat. And then I spoke to the catering team. So again, make sure you arrive early, take your time. Speak to the catering team is like #1, because they need to know exactly what they need to do with the cake. Again, they didn't listen to me, so we will get onto that at the end. And then make sure the area is suitable. The table that they gave me was very, very wobbly. However, it wasn't the legs that were wobbly, it was the top, like the circular top. It was a very old building, it was a golf club. So they said it's either this or a fold-out table. And judging by how heavy that cake was, I was like, it's not going on a fold-out table at all. So we went for that table instead. And then in the end, it was the table wasn't the problem, it was more the people. But make sure that you've got a suitable area, because you don't want to put it on a table that is then going to fall over and then you have issues with the cake. I've had one before where they put it on a little silver trolley that they built in front of me, and when they were screwing it together I was like, that is not going to work, and it was stressing me out. But I said to them, if you want to put it on that, go ahead. So the last thing which I mentioned is communicate with the bride. So in regards to what went wrong, so that's everything that you really need to know. I will put a list here of the bag that you need to take, but I will go through it in detail in another video so that you understand why you're taking these things, any alternatives if you don't have these things, etc. So what went wrong? I left the venue, like I said, it was about 10:15 because I had to change, and then I got a call just before 11 and they said, the cake looks lovely, thank you so much, like we'll probably speak to you later on, blah blah blah. So I took that as, we're all sorted, like it's all done, perfect. So I was like stress free, I was like, right, I can enjoy myself now. And then I get a call half an hour later saying that the catering team has dismantled the cake before the bride has seen it, before the guests have arrived, and they've just put it in the fridge like psychos. I don't know if they'd never done a wedding before or something, but it was a very popular wedding venue, so I don't know what they were thinking. Apparently they told the bride that the cake was melting. It would not have been melting after an hour, and it was cold as well that day. And also, even if it does melt, it is doweled, like it has something like 30 dowels in it. So even if the cake melts, it's not going to fall over. I've had cakes be left out for 6 hours in like 30-degree heat. Like one of them was a wedding cake, it was 3 tiers, and they said it didn't fall over, it just started to slant. So I don't know what they were thinking, but that stressed me out. And then I said to the bride, the bride's sister, sorry, if you need to call me, then do, because we can restack it together over Skype. But I don't know what they were thinking. So I had spoken to the catering team. I told them, do not dismantle it, it can last about 5 hours, and that's staying in good condition, like it could probably last longer. So I said I wouldn't leave it out for more than 5 hours, but I said you're going to be doing the cutting just after, about an hour after the people have arrived, which is like 2 o'clock. So I said it wouldn't have been out for very long, so it's fine. and they agreed to that. And then they also moaned that they don't like when clients get cakes this big, because then they worry about dropping it and all that kind of stuff, which is obviously why they dismantled it, because they were worried that it was gonna fall over or they were gonna get done for it. And I told them specifically, do not touch that cake. Like, I have spent an hour putting that together, do not touch it. And then half an hour later they decided to dismantle it. So don't know what that was about, but unfortunately you can't control what the venue does. They will do what they like, but just try and be as helpful as possible in that kind of situation. I was just very overly friendly. I was like, if you need to call me, please do. Like, if you need to Skype me, I will help you through it, because they paid a lot of money for that cake and for it to be dismantled before anyone's seen it, even the bride. Like, what the hell? So that was the stressful part of the day, but luckily a few days later the bride messaged me saying it tasted absolutely amazing, she loved it so much. So they must have restacked it. They didn't call me in the end. I went to the rave, I didn't get a phone call or anything to restack it with them, so I'm assuming that it went okay. So that is how that went. But yeah, so that is everything you need to know about wedding cakes and the stress of them. So I hope that was helpful, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!